ביום שבת בשעה 6:30 בבוקר שמחת תורה החלה המתקפה האכזרית שתוכננה בקפידה במשך שנתיים. המפתח היה אלמנט ההפתעה. הכל החל במטח טילים כבד לעבר אזורים רבים בישראל. בחסות הטילים מתקדם כוח החלוץ, כמה מאות מחבלים מיחידת העילית נוח'בה שמתמחה ומתאמנת בדיוק לרגע הזה, חדירה לשטח ישראל. תנועתם בתוך הרצועה לעבר הגבול הייתה ככל הנראה דרך מנהרות, כדי שלא לעורר חשד. כאן הגיע שלב המפתח לכל המתקפה, פגיעה במערך התצפיות המשוכלל של צה"ל, מערכת רואה יורה באמצעות רחפנים ומטעני נפץ ממוקדים. השלב הבא, פגיעה בגנרטורים ובהספקת החשמל לגדר ולרשת הקשר של המוצבים, וניטרול מערך המצלמות שאמורות לחזק ולגבות את אמצעי ההגנה. כך למעשה קרס בקלות כל מערך הגילוי הטכנולוגי.
אללהו אכבר וללה אלחמד, היי שוגל טייב. אללהו אכבר!
כשהעיניים והאוזניים של מפקדת אוגדת עזה מנוטרלים, ניתן האות לפריצת הגדר בכ-20 נקודות לכל אורך הגבול. הכוחות התוקפים היו מוכנים היטב לטנקים הבודדים שהוזנקו ופגעו בהם בטילי נ"ט וברחפנים. לאחר שחצו את הגדר, המטרות הבאות היו בסיסי ומוצבי צה"ל הפרוסים לאורך הגבול. כאן נכנס לפעולה הגל השני של התקיפה, שמנה כבר יותר מ-1,200 מחבלים. במוצבים האלה אין מספיק חיילים שיכולים להתמודד עם כוח תוקף כל כך גדול, בוודאי לא בשבת, מה גם שרבים מהלוחמים שהו באותה עת במרחבים מוגנים בשל ירי הרקטות. המחבלים תקפו וכבשו את מפקדת אוגדת עזה, הלב הפועם של הזירה, את מעבר ארז בצפון הרצועה, מוצבי התצפית נחל עוז וכיסופים, והחזיקו בהם במשך שעות ארוכות. משנוטרלה ההגנה הצבאית, הדרך לפגיעה באזרחים הייתה קצרה. כל חוליה קיבלה יישוב מטרה וגודלה היה בהתאם. על קיבוץ בארי הגדול, למשל, הסתערו יותר מ100 מחבלים. כמה חוליות נפרסו בצירים הראשיים, הקימו מחסומים ותקפו שוטרים, למנוע זרימה של כוחות תגבור. מי שבאו לעזור לא שיערו בנפשם איזו כמות וכוח אש יעמדו מולם. בקיבוצים זיקים, כרם שלום, ניר עם, סעד ואלומים הצליחו כיתות הכוננות בקרבות הירואיים להדוף את המחבלים. קיבוצים אחרים נכבשו.
مشهدية ونحن في قلب المستوطنة تمكن المقاتلين هنا من الاستخدام بشكل مباشر خلق المستوطنين وقتل الجنود.
באותה עת חגגו בחניון רעים אלפי בני אדם במסיבה, בלי לדעת שעשרות מחבלים מאגפים אותם מכל הכיוונים, ברגל ובכלי רכב. הם הגיעו לטווח קצר מאוד מהמבלים ולא הותירו להם סיכוי. הערכה היא כי חלק מהמחבלים שפשטו על המסיבה היו אלה שחדרו במצנחי הרחיפה והצליחו לנחות בעומק השטח. כך נוצרה מתקפה מכמה כיוונים בשטח רחב יחסית. הטבח במסיבה נמשך עד השעה 12 בצהריים. שעות רבות שבהן לעורף ולפיקוד הישראלים אין שום מושג מה מתרחש באמת. אין שום מושג עד כמה עצומה ואכזרית המתקפה.
ברוכים הבאים בשם השם. Today we want to remember the day of Simchat Torah. The day of Simchat Torah, the last Simchat Torah, last year. As a Jew, as Jews, we live at Chodesh Tishrei and not in October. That is our life. And the day of Simchat Torah Tafshin Pei Gimel, that it's a day of love, that the Kodesh Baruch Hu loves Israel so much. This is the day of Simchat Torah. Kodesh Baruch Hu spoke with us harshly. וידבר השם דברים קשים. שמחת תורה is a day of אהבת השם לישראל. עשו לי סעודה קטנה. Me and you, פר אחד. And this day was so difficult day to Am Israel. This war caused to the reveal of Kedushat Israel, to the reveal of Sgulat Israel and Gvurat Israel. Herodism, I suppose, of Israel, Herodism. Gvurat Israel, Kedushat Israel, and Sgulat Israel appeared in this day, in this period of time. Soldiers, citizens, all Am Israel, all over the world, became one Am Echad, one nation, Am Echad. אתה אחד ושמך אחד, ומי כעמך ישראל גוי אחד בארץ, בארץ ישראל. And because we know that Kodesh Baruch Hu loves Israel so much, and especially in this day of Simchat Torah, we sure that with all our tears and suffering and pain, the Kodesh Baruch Hu will take it to a good aim to Am Israel. We are in the process of Geulah, and we sure that this process will go on. We sure that this war, that the name is CHARVOT BARZEL, I would like to call it the war of Simchat Torah, like the war of Yom Kippur, will cause and will bring Am Israel to Geulah Shlema. And this is important part of this process of Shivat Zion and the building of Am Israel in Eretz Israel. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says by Yeshayahu HaNavi, "Ani ashbir velo olid." Rav Drukman Zecher Tzadik Livracha used to say this nevuah and the explanation of this nevuah many times. Ani ashbir velo olid. It means, shall I will take the woman to birth and without birth, without a child? The birth is with pain, chevlei leda. But the Kodesh Baruch Hu promised us. Rashi says b'makom, כלומר, שמא אתחיל בדבר ולא אוכל לגמור. He brought us to Eretz Israel. So we know, we believe, with our pains, we remember, and we believe באמונה שלמה. The first, אני מאמין באמונה שלמה שהקדוש ברוך הוא בורא ומנהיג לכל הברואים, והוא לבדו עשה ועושה ויעשה לכל המעשים. And due to all those korbanot, all those tzaddikim in this war, will we come, אם ירצה השם, to גאולה שלמה in מדינת ישראל, from מדינת ישראל, ראשית צמיחת גאולתנו. This gathering is a gathering of emunah before Yom HaKadosh, before Yom HaKippurim, to be zchut to Am Israel, a gathering of emunah and gvura. We are davening the shichrut, to release of all the chatufim, and refuah shlema to all the psuim, and for our soldier, our old soldier, to come back from the Emir Hashem from this war. And we are asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu, מבקשים מהקדוש ברוך הוא שיחתום את כל עם ישראל, כל עם ישראל, כל עם ישראל, right wing, left wing, all עם ישראל, לחיים טובים, לשנה טובה ולגאולה שלמה במהרה בימינו.
Thank you to the Rosh Yeshiva for opening the program tonight. My name is Ruvain Tarragon. On behalf of Yeshivat Hakotel and World Mizrachi, we welcome everyone here for this special program. We want to thank all those who've worked to make this possible. Ariel Chesner here from World Mizrachi, and Eliyahu Klein from Yeshivat Hakotel is working here, and Charlie Engelhardt, who's showing the videos. Without further ado,
a very special welcome to all of the Bachrei Yeshiva who joined Mizrachi, hosted together with Yeshivat Hakotel at this very special event marking the difficult events of October 7th. Of course, the Hebrew date is Simchat Torah, but we all know of October 7th. The only reason I'm not there with you in person is because I am in the United States as part of an Israeli delegation of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs as part of a tekes, a ceremony at the United Nations on this day, to advocate for our son. I'm talking on behalf of the hostages. Unfortunately, our son Daniel, Hashem Yikom Damo, is one of 101 hostages still held in Gaza as of this recording. Many of them deceased like my son, and others like Matan Shachar Ben Anat in his tank waiting to come home alive, please God. And who would have ever believed that a year on, here we are at Rosh Hashanah, a year on, and there are still 101 men, women and children, young and old, held in this brutal captivity. So I'm there to advocate for them. But I want to thank you all for coming, for being part of our Mizrachi program along with Yeshivat Hakotel, and for coming to Israel for a gap year. It's such an important year in your lives, and such an important year in the lives of the state of Israel. And in this year, to really spend your time in this year thinking about the type of people you want to be, the type of Jews you want to be people committed to the Mizrachi's logo is Am Yisrael, a love and solidarity with the Jewish people. Torah Yisrael, ki haim chayin v'orech chameinu, a commitment to Torah, learning and living in every possible way, and a commitment to the land, Eretz Yisrael, the land and state of Israel, especially at this time, and to bless all of our soldiers, many friends of yours, perhaps siblings, fighting in the north, fighting in the south, that Bezrat Hashem should look after every single one of them, should all be well, should look after all the civilians, all the hostages should come home, they should bring healing to all of those who need healing. It should just be a wonderful year. You're going to see a video about my son and about what we've been through. And please God, Bezrat Hashem, we should only know B'sorot Tovot, Yeshuot V'nechamot for a healthy and happy year. 5785.
just to explain to those who don't know, the person who just spoke to us on the video is named Rav Doron Perez. Rav Doron Perez is the head of World Mizrachi, the real hero of the Jewish people. His son was one of the fighters on October 7th who fought heroically to defend the civilians who were there. He was taken captive, and it took 163 days to find out that he had been killed on October 7th. Rav Doron is representing the state of Israel and the Jewish people at the United Nations today in a few hours to speak about the plight of the hostages. We're about to show a special video about his son that was made specifically for this event. It's the first time it's being screened.
My name is Dorot, of the story of the deceased families, of the bereaved families, the Mishpachot Shkulot of Yom HaZikaron. This Yom HaZikaron is unlike any other Yom HaZikaron. Here I am at Hostage Square, 133 hostages, including the body of our son Daniel. And you know, his story is perhaps like the story of the Jewish people this last year, since October 7th. He was first missing, then taken hostage, hopefully alive. Then we knew he was injured. Then we heard 163 days later that he was deceased. His body still held in Gaza. And our son Yonatan, who fought 100 meters away from Daniel, was injured himself. This Yom HaZikaron here at Hostage Square this year is unlike any other Yom HaZikaron that we, as the Jewish people in the state of Israel, have faced. Our son Daniel, what can I say about him? The most free-spirited, independent person that I knew. ADHD, adventure-seeking, fun-loving, always surrounded by friends, hundreds of friends he had. And a person who nothing could make him do what he didn't want to do. But if he wanted to do something, nothing could stop him. Indeed, when he was injured at the age of 18 in a wakeboarding accident and his profile was taken down, he fought with the army almost for a year so that at least he could go to Shirion. And indeed, his life led him on that fateful day to be an officer in the Israeli army, an outstanding soldier, ready to do whatever he needed to do to defend his people and homeland. You know, one of the gifts we got was his possessions which returned from Nachal Oz base. And in this we found a diary that we didn't know existed, that he began to write when he became an officer about 8 months before he passed. And in this diary, he writes about his responsibility as an officer. And what blew my mind when we opened to the first page in the diary, he says, Dvarim shani choshev alem lifnei hashena, the things that I think about before I go to sleep. And at the top of the list was, I understand what my mission is. When I went to Poland in high school, I understood the price we paid for not having a state. Now that I'm able to defend my country and people and home, it is my responsibility. And then he wrote the following 5 words in Hebrew, Im lo ani, as me. If not me, then who? Daniel, when he put on his army uniform, took all of those energies and adventure seeking and channeled them towards serving the Jewish people. And on that day, for those 2.25 hours, him and his tzevet, his crew, fought with such bravery, with such coolness, with one thing which we indeed wrote in his gravestone, Daniel ish chamudot, this beautiful, wonderful Daniel, like his forebear Daniel in the book of Daniel. And we wrote the following 3 expressions. We wrote, Davak b'mesima, he stuck to the task at hand. Lacham b'gvura, he fought with courage. Hitzil rabim, he saved so many. In the Shiva, 2 families from Nachal Oz kibbutz came to us in tears, saying that they felt that their families were saved by Daniel's tank. They read about what his tank did and their bravery, and relatively few people were taken hostage and killed in Nachal Oz. And they came to thank us on behalf of 133 children and families that perhaps Daniel's tank and his crew was the difference between life and death. You save one person, you save generations. On that, arguably the most fateful day in Israel's history, Providence decreed that our son Daniel and his crew would be where they needed to be to do everything they could to defend the people and state of Israel. I've been very involved in Yom HaZikaron ceremonies throughout my life as a student, an individual, a Jew, and a Jewish leader. I never thought I would be a father of our beloved son Daniel, participating so integrally in this National Day of Commemoration. My feelings are mixed feelings of immeasurable pain and pride. So full of pride as a father for our son Daniel, that despite the immeasurable pain, if it was decreed last Rosh Hashanah that Daniel was to pass away, to do it in a way that he was where he wanted to be, giving everything he could to defend his fellow Jews and the state of Israel, to dial Kiddush Hashem with such altruism, commitment and dedication to his people is an honor. And I'm so proud to be his father, while my heart is so full of sorrow and pain. The story of the Jewish people, of course, is not only one of pain and suffering. Our family story also somehow reflects this Jewish story. It wasn't 10 days after our son Daniel was declared missing that our oldest son Yonatan, himself injured in the battle, limped to his wedding on the 17th of October to be married. And here we had this impossible task. On the one hand, to be full of appreciation for the son, the injured son that could have been killed, God forbid, that we have and is getting married, along with the pain, the difficulty for the son that we do not, Daniel, who was missing. Yet, perhaps the most profound thing that I've learned in the last 6 or 7 months is how these two live together. The pain and the pride, the simcha, the celebration together with the suffering, all indeed can and do live together. And I've come to see how this really is the story of the Jewish people. You see, it was Thomas Cahill, the famed American-Irish historian and writer, who said in his book, The Gifts of the Jews, that it was the Jews who gave humanity the concept of memory and history, to look back and to remember our past And he said in the story of the Jewish people is the story of humanity, that all this pain and suffering together with a celebration and their hope works together. And that indeed is what Yom HaZikaron, the day of memory and remembrance, is all about. Because straight from this day we go into Yom HaAtzmaut, the time of celebration, that these two go together, the difficulty and the celebration together. And so too from Tanit Esther we go straight into Purim. And indeed, the day of remembrance, when we remember Laman Tizkor at Yom Tzeit Chametz Mitzrayim, where we sat together only a few weeks ago and together remembered what is the story of the Jewish people. And we tell our children, and we told them, and we tell them in every generation, Vehi she'amda, shebechol dor vador, indeed, in every generation there are pharaohs. There are those who wish to destroy us, to do everything that they can, and we have witnessed anti-Semitism and opposition as we speak to Israel and Jewish destiny, that who would have imagined in our lifetime we would see such a thing. But we are told, not only shebechol dor vador, we are told, v'hakadosh baruch hu matzilenu mi'adam, that Hashem will save us and does and has always saved us and will once again save us with hope from them. And indeed, on this day there is so much bitterness. Our son, part of the bitterness, along with 1,500 others who've lost their lives, a bitterness that will always be throughout life, accompanying every experience of life, tinged with the bitterness of the maror, with the lechem oni, the bread of affliction that our family and so many others have been afflicted by. But that is only part of the story. It's not the whole story. The matzah is also the bread of salvation, the Korban Pesach, and the future of Jewish destiny. And yes, there is indeed so much pain, so much loss, so much difficulty, but never despair. And that's why perhaps arguably the most central Jewish word is tikva, which appears kavel Hashem chazak v'yametz libecha. There is always tikva, v'yesh tikva lachriteh. There's always hope that no matter how painful and difficult life is, and so often is, there is pride, there is belief in Jewish destiny, there is a future. And part of this hope, specifically this year, as I sit in Hostage Square, along with 133 empty chairs, that the body, the lifeless body of our son Daniel, should return with all of those to be buried with a kever Yisrael, a dignified Jewish burial. And the many who are alive, each and every one of them soon should be reunited with their families, and to bring each and every one of them home. The Jewish people will prevail. Am Yisrael Chai.
I'd like to ask Mr. Roy Abukassis, the head of the Department of Education at the WZO and the Deputy Director of the JNF, to please recite the tefillah on behalf of the hostages. Everyone please rise.
מי שברך אבותינו, אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, יוסף, משה, אהרון, דוד ושלמה, הוא יברך וישמור וינצור את כל השבויים והנעדרים בתוך שאר אחינו בית ישראל הנתונים בצרה ובשביה. בעבור שאנו מתפללים בעבורם, הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא רחמים עליהם ויוציאם מחושך וצל מוות, ומסורותיהם ינתק, וממצוקותיהם יושיעם, וישיבם מהרה לחיק משפחותיהם. יודו לאדוני חסדו ונפלאותיו לבני אדם, ויקוים בהם מקרא שכתוב, ופדויי אדוני ישובון, ובאו ציון ברינה, ושמחת עולם על ראשם, ששון ושמחה ישיגו, ונעשו יגון והנחה, ונאמר אמן.
So
The story of Rav Doron Perez's son, who fought on behalf of the Jewish people on Simchat Torah. Hundreds of soldiers have lost their lives since, as hundreds of thousands have fought for us. I know Eitan from YU. People should realize it's Olim, it's natural residents of Israel. We're all fighting together. I remember Eitan at YU, and he's lived here, made Aliyah, raised his family here, and his son Ma'oz is one of the fighters on behalf of the Jewish people who gave his life in the past month since Simchat Torah. And we want to learn more about him and hear more about the story from his parents, Eitan and Varda.
The first thing that I need to tell you about Ma'oz is that Ma'oz, his entire life, always had a very difficult time waking up in the morning. I don't know if any of you have experienced that, but he was always hard for him to wake up. And he would ask me to wake him up, and I would pull him up, and he would fall back, and it was always very difficult. 8 months ago, on February 15th, at that point, Ma'oz had been fighting in Gaza for 95 days. And the way it works in Gaza, I don't know if you know how it works. The way it works is that the soldiers capture a certain area, and then at night they sleep. They take over a house in the area that they captured, and that's where they sleep in. And they stay there for the night, or sometimes 2 or 3 nights, and then they move on and go into another house. In the army, they call it an Itur. And they had been in the house of the Itur for more than 1 day, I think 2 nights or 3 even. It was 9 o'clock in the morning, and the 12 soldiers were in the living room area of the house preparing to go out for the day's missions. And as they were sitting there, a grenade was thrown into the room, and it blew up, and every single person in the room was injured. Ma'oz was not in the room. Ma'oz was in the next room, sleeping. And when the grenade blew up, he jumped up. We now know how to wake him up. He jumped, he went right into the living room where he found the paramedic, and the medic started already giving first aid to the wounded, but 2 people was not enough for 12 wounded soldiers. So Ma'oz, who was not a medic, started to assist wherever he could. His direct commander, his officer, was injured very, very seriously in a major artery and was bleeding out. And Ma'oz stopped the bleeding in a particular procedure called packing, which usually regular soldiers who are not medics don't know how to do it. But his officer, the very same one who was bleeding out, made sure that all of his soldiers had a high level of medical knowledge, and Ma'oz saved his life. And he went from soldier to soldier, trying to do what he can. And then they had to evacuate them. So 12 times they were on the 2nd floor, they went downstairs, and again, there's something called the Machzarit. It's kind of like a tank, but without the gun part. And they have certain ones that are like ambulances in that they have very high-level medical equipment and doctors. And the Achzarit pulls up and they have to bring the wounded soldiers down the steps into the Achzarit. But what's going on is that the grenade was not a one-off shot. It was the opening shot to an organized attack on the house. So as they're bringing the wounded down and into the Achzarit, there's a whole battle going around defending the house. The other soldiers are defending the house from the attacking terrorists. So all this is going on under fire. We have a short video where we'll see Maoz coming in with the wounded soldier down the stairs. And this is taken about 20 minutes before he himself will fall. Just imagine shooting. Maoz is standing in the back of the stretcher. So 12 times they go up and down, up and down, up and down. And once all of the wounded are safely taken off to the helicopters, Maoz runs upstairs to get his mag. A mag is this gun that you see here in the picture. Here he's shooting it in a range. The main thing is, this is him in a different battle in Gaza. The main thing you have to know about the mag is that it's a very heavy gun to carry, and it gives very heavy fire. And Maoz runs upstairs to his mag, and he goes up to the roof to give cover fire for the soldiers fighting off the terrorists on the street level. And when he arrives at the roof, he finds two people up there. He finds the head commander. He was in a unit called Sayeret Tzadchanim, and the head commander of the whole Sayeret was up there directing the battle. And there was another soldier there who was shooting with his regular gun, like an M16, like the kind of gun that you see soldiers walking around with. And he told me, this soldier, that Maoz shows up out of nowhere on the roof. And he has a big smile on his face. Maoz was always smiling. He says in the middle of the battle, Maoz was smiling. And he says to me, step aside with your toy gun. Let me get in there with a real gun. Because compared to the mag, the other gun is, like a toy gun. So he steps aside, and Maoz comes in with his heavy fire, and he starts giving very heavy fire, 1,200 rounds a minute. It's a very serious gun. And it causes the terrorists to retreat into the building that they were next to. And then he traps them in the building, and he shoots for a very long time with the mag, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, that's a very long time with the mag. And in that time, they bring a tank. The tank shoots down the building on top of it on the terrace. However, the roof that Maoz was standing on was very, very close to the roof, to the other building, like maybe between here and the wall, even closer, I think. And so when they shot at the building, a piece of the building would, pieces of the building shoot all over the place, and one piece went and hit Maoz and hit him and went into his head. 38 minutes later, he's in the hospital. When we arrived at the hospital, we were told that there's nothing to do. There's no hope, and they can't do any surgery on it. It's inoperable, and that's it. And we asked how much time, and they said a few hours, maybe a few days. And so over the next few days, this was on a Thursday, Friday, Shabbat, and Sunday, our whole family's there. All his friends come. And we were saying goodbye to him. The armor officer had told us that even though it doesn't seem like it, we were given a gift, because most soldiers die and they fall, and their parents are told that they fell, and then there's a funeral the next day. But we had a certain amount of time to feel that we could say goodbye to him, the Hipareh. And so we did, and all his friends came to the hospital, all his rebbe's came to the hospital Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Shabbos, Sunday, and then Monday, finally, his team from the army, who had been in Gaza for 8 weeks straight. On Monday, they got out of Gaza. That was scheduled, that was supposed to be. And they came directly to the hospital and I had to part and say goodbye to him, really. And a few hours later, our entire family, we have 6 children, 5 boys and a girl. Moses is the 4th. All of our family were alone, just our family together with him in his room in intensive care. And we had a special tefillah. And about 5-10 minutes into this tefillah, we see that all the numbers on the intensive care monitor started to plummet. So we all look at each other, and we start to say everyone together, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And as we ended Echad, all the numbers reached 0, and he passed from this world. As we left the room, there were other soldiers in intensive care. One in particular, his name was Oded Schechter from Shoham, who was injured. He was there already a month, and he was massively injured in many, many different places. And for over a week, for the entire time that we were there, they were trying to revive him from his coma. And they were unable to the entire time. And as we walked out of Moses' room after he passed, I looked into Schechter's room and I see that he had just woken up. In the same moment that Maoz passed, Schechter was revived, and Varda spoke to his mother a few times since then, and he's doing very well, and he's getting stronger every day.
So Eitan told you about Maoz's heroism, and that not only in those last moments, there were other battles that he had where he was extremely heroic. But to most of us, he was just a regular kid. And, he had lots of friends. He loved sports. He actually played American flag football here in Israel. He was a champion in Kung Fu, and he loved to play soccer, and he learned how to rappel, and he bought rappelling equipment, and he was like a happy kid with lots of friends around, always, everything is great, but one thing, not so great. This is a picture of Maoz on his first day of school, of first grade. And he looks so happy because he doesn't know what's awaiting him. Maoz had a really hard time in school. He had a lot of learning disabilities, and he had attention problems, and school was a huge challenge for him. Thank God, unlike his older brothers, he didn't have a lot of behavioral problems, so he made it through pretty well. Here's him on his, getting his Chumash party, and in his first day of high school, he went to high school with Rav Vider's son, his youngest son, Yedidya. This is him and Maoz learning together in 9th grade. They were best friends. Actually, on the day that Maoz was injured, Yedidya, Rav Vider's son, was supposed to get engaged. And instead, he and his soon-to-be Kala came to the hospital to go and be with Maoz. Anyway, so Maoz went through high school. He made it through. It wasn't so easy. He worked hard. He did what he had to do. And then it came time for him to decide what to do after high school. And he wanted to go to a specific Hesder yeshiva it's called Evyatar. At the time, it was in Tapuach. Probably none of you have heard of it. And he wanted to go there because he thought that was the right place for him, the right type of boys. So even though it's not really not big deal to get into Hesder yeshiva so much, maybe here, yes, but most of them no. So, but you still have a little bit of a bechina. So the Rav came and gave him a bechina on the Gemara. And at the end, he said to him, Maoz, you're a weak Gemara learner. And in our yeshiva, we learn Gemara morning, afternoon, and night. And it's going to be very hard for you. And I really don't think it's the right place for you. And Maoz didn't take no for an answer. He said, no, this is where I want to go. And so the Rosh Yeshiva said, fine, if you want to come here, you'll come. If it's not the right place for you, you'll figure it out on your own and you'll leave. So Maoz knew that he had a huge challenge ahead of him. And what did he do? He turned to Yedidja Vida, who's a good Gemara learner, strong learner, and he said, be my chavrusa for the morning Seder. And then he spoke to his Rav, and he said, can you have a chavrusa with me? And then he found an older Avrech that came back from the army already, and he asked him, can you have a chavrusa with me? And so he chose people that he knew would be able to help him. And every day, this is how the learning would be. His chavrusa would read the line in the Gemara, explain it, and Maoz would say, Lo evanti, I don't understand. He'd read it again, Ani lo mevin. Read it again, Lo mevin. Again, until finally, okay, hevanti, I understood. To move on to the next line. And this would go on, line after line, daf after daf, amud, I don't know. Morning, afternoon, evening Seder, day after day after day. And Maoz, he didn't give up. He wasn't just embarrassed, okay, after you so many times say, I don't understand, many of us will just say, okay, forget it, I got it, even though we don't really. But he had real honesty, and he knew that if he was going to succeed, he had to really get it. And even if that meant swallowing his pride, so be it. He asked for help when he needed it, and when he didn't understand something, he said so. And this is the way that he went through his whole first year of yeshiva. And sometime during the beginning of his second year, he realized that he wasn't putting his all into it. It was becoming too challenging for him, and it was time for him to go to the army. Now, Maoz, we don't have that picture, okay. He decided to try out to get into Sanchanim, the paratroopers, and he was accepted to the elite unit, the Sayeret Sanchanim, which is very difficult to get into. But with the physical stuff, he had a much easier time than with the Gemara learning. So he was accepted to the Sayeret Sanchanim. Now, in his group of 30 soldiers that spent day and night together. That spent day and night together, it wasn't like, let's say, our other two older sons were in Golani. There are a lot of religious boys with him, but almost everyone was secular. There were only 2 or 3 other boys that were religious. And Maoz had been his whole life with religious in yeshiva and our yeshuv, and all of his circles were always with people very similar to him. But he was able to make a very big impression on the soldiers that he was with. When during the Shiva, they all were telling us how Maoz always would have a little book in his pocket. And when they would go on these very long masaot, like hikes, with all of their marches, with all of their equipment on their back, holding many, many pounds of equipment. So after hours and hours of walking, they would have a chance to sit down and rest for a few minutes. And everyone told us during the Shiva how Maoz, everyone would just sit down and finally a chance to rest. And Maoz would take out his little book and start reading it. What was his book? Mesilat Yesharim. Okay, not a book that, as you all know, a sefer that helps us with our midot, but not something that's so difficult to read, something that we're able to do, something that you can read when after you've been hiking for 5 or 6 hours, so it's doable. And that was what Maoz was like. He was slow and steady. He would choose something that was important to him to do, and that was doable, and he would set a goal and do it. When he was in 12th grade, he came over to Eitan and he said, Abba, I'm making a Siyum Hashas Mishnayot this Shabbos. And Eitan said to him, I know here and there you learn some Mishnayot, but when did you learn all of Shas Mishnayot? I said, well, in 9th grade, our Rosh Yeshiva told us that if we learn 3 Mishnayot a day and 4 on Shabbos, then in 12th grade we'll be able to finish all of Shas Mishnayot. So I did that. He took on things that were doable, but he was consistent with them. After Maoz passed away, after Maoz passed away, we found we were joking during the funeral, during the shiva. The children, our children and I, a little bit of black humor. So how many soldiers have these letters that they write or diaries that they keep, like Jerome Perez was talking about his son, or many Israelis also write poetry. It's a very popular thing here. Like everyone writes poetry. And then they find these hidden notebooks of poetry that fallen soldiers wrote, and famous Israeli singers make it into songs, and the whole country knows them. So we were joking around that we don't expect to find anything like that of Maoz's. But about a month after he passed, we got a box with his personal effects. And in the box, there were notebooks, but they weren't notebooks of poetry or diaries, but they said on them, private, don't touch, do not open, do not touch. Of course, we opened them. And what were in the notebooks? They were lists. At first, these lists seemed like everyday, regular lists of what I want to do tomorrow, what I need to do here, what's this. But then we saw that there was more to them. There were lists about what do I want to learn this summer's man, what can I do when I'm at home, when I come home from yeshivot over the weekend or on vacations in order not to waste time. So here are some of his lists. Expectations for myself for tomorrow. So right, you think very normal, everyday things, and there were some like that, like wake up on time. Every list said wake up on time, because that was something that was difficult for him, but it was important to him. And it was something that he failed at many times, but he still kept trying. We found his friends showed us all of these letters that he wrote to them, thanking them for waking him up, because he would always ask all of his friends to wake him up because it was so important to him, but so difficult for him. Try to be focused all day. Have kavana in my prayers. And then we found a list. What are my goals for the upcoming week? Go to sleep on time. Wake up for davening, because then I feel better all day. Pay attention to what I say and how I speak to people. Try to learn well in the morning session. So we started seeing that even though these lists seemed like very everyday type of lists, they were actually much deeper than that. They actually showed us about his values and the things that were important to him, and about how he went about reaching goals that were important to him. And then we found a list that he made before he went to the army, his commitments for his army service, to learn every day, which we heard from his friends that he did, to go to visit his yeshiva for Shabbat once every 2 months, to wear tzitzit all the time, which he did, to write a halachic question in his notebook every day, which he did, I think, most days, to look at my service in a positive way and not to be upset and disappointed all the time, to be a servant of God during and after my service, to succeed in helping others in my group, to take initiative, not to get upset and frustrated by the little things. Be careful about halacha without cutting corners. So this picture of someone who is so devoted to his learning and to halacha and to all the things in the Jewish day, we came to life, and we saw, and this is what his friends saw. His friends, he wasn't one to show off about things. He was quiet about things, but they saw this about him. And then we found a list when he got the job of being the one who holds the mag, which Eitan told you about. It's called the magist. Now, nobody wants this job. right? Each person gets a different job, sometimes like a medic or different types of guns, and he was upset about it. He didn't want it. It's heavy, you're in the back, but that's what he got. So he made for himself goals. Don't complain. Don't slow others down by walking slowly. Always give 100%. Try and help others, and never give up. So we saw that even though Maoz did not write poetry, that these lists were actually his poetry. They were his way of telling us who he was and what was important to him. So after Maoz was killed, Eitan and I were interviewed many times, and one of the interviewers asked us if we regret making Aliyah, because we made Aliyah, our son went to the army and then he was killed. So both of us immediately answered that no, we do not regret making Aliyah. We do not regret that, you know, for us as on a personal level, losing our son is a terrible thing. But the fact that he was killed when he was fighting to defend Am Yisrael, in his last moments, he was saving his friends, and he went up to that roof, and he made sure to do what he had to do to protect his unit and all of us. And because of him, we're all here. So we feel it's a privilege to have a son that was killed on Kiddush Hashem. But of course, there's the personal pain that we have. And I remember that in the months following his death, I was so busy taking care of my children and worrying about them, and I think I was in denial that I didn't really have so much time to really feel the pain. And then I went to a wedding of a good friend of his best friend, Rav Vider's son, who got married under a chuppah that he made in memory of Maoz. He and his wife made a chuppah in memory of Maoz. And I was standing at that wedding, and he and this boy, they went together to the same high school and to the same yeshiva, and they were in the army together. And it could have been Maoz's wedding. All the rabbanim that were there, all the friends that were there, they were all the same friends, all the same rabbanim. And suddenly it hit me, Maoz is not going to be standing under a chuppah. Maoz is not going to get married, he's not going to have children. And for the first time, I really, really cried and let it all out. And that's one of the reasons why we've been going around, Eitan and I, and speaking about Maoz, because we realized that Maoz, because of the way he was killed as a hero, fighting for all of us, so he's not only our son, and he's not only my children's brother, he's really everybody's son, and he's your brother as well. And if some of the things that we said here today about Maoz, about what was important to him, about the way that he dealt with when something was hard, and he would ask for help and not be embarrassed to say, I don't understand, and set goals for himself. If some of those things speak to you, and because of that, you do something a little differently, or you tell other people about it, then he does live on. And he does continue to live on in all of us. So thank you very much for listening.
On behalf of everyone here, I want to thank Eitan and Varda for helping us appreciate who Maoz was, and hopefully his memory will inspire us to take more advantage of our lives. We appreciate your sacrifice on behalf of the Jewish people, and we want you to know that we appreciate you, and you have our chizuk, and should continue only sharing smachot and nachat from all of your wonderful family. Since Simchat Torah, 730 soldiers have been killed. The 730th was today, and almost 1,000 others police, civilians have lost their lives, a total of 1,690. And each one of them is a precious soul, someone who's been lost to the Jewish people. Each one of them is worthy of saying Kaddish and Akel Maleh. Sadly, we don't have the hours to say for each of them, but we'd like to join Chazan Shai Abramson in the Akel Maleh on behalf of all of the soldiers and civilians. Please rise. Please rise. Time for us to also honor the many Chayalim who have been fighting, some of whom are with us today. We're very proud to be able to gift each of the Chayalim who are here with a special hard tu'udah and a sefer. The tu'udah reads, and we're going to play in the background as the Chayalim come up, the Mishaberach for the Chayalim who are fighting, also with Cantor Shai from the chief cantor of Tzahal. The tu'udah reads, this tu'udah of self-sacrifice and dedication is given to you with an appreciation of your dedication to the Jewish people, your courage, your strength that you've shown in this war, your choice to dedicate yourself to the Jewish people over your own self, to the nation over your family. Your gvura has fulfilled the words of the Mishnah that describe how everyone goes out to fight a Milchemet Mitzvah. May the merit of your dedication and of your family's dedication bring you the schud of returning peacefully to your home and building your eternal family within the Jewish people. And may we all see eye to eye the words of the prophet, Kol tzofayach nasu kol, yachdav yiranenu, ki ayin ba'ayin yiru b'shuv Hashem Tzion, pitzchu ranenu yachdav CHARVOT Yerushalayim, ki nicham Hashem amoga al Yerushalayim, chasaf Hashem et tzvaro kadsho, la'enei kol hagoyim, v'ra'u kol afsei eretz et yeshuat Elokeinu. With great appreciation and love, Yeshivat Hakotel and the Mizrahi World Movement. I'd like to call upon to please come up and accept a token of our appreciation, Eliyahu Klein, who is also helping us put out this event tonight, Charlie Engelhardt, who's taking care of the computer, Sam Rothstein, Yosef Besso Cowan, Akiva Sternthal, Jesse Friedman, Avihu Pelman, and Ido Achvan. And I'd like to mention Chayalim who've been redrafted since we prepared this program: Ilan Schwartz, Yair Chalaf, Rav Ari Heller, Rav Yigal Chabshush, Zach Winkler, Josh Halkower, and Tzvi Vogel. Thank you. Let's all stand for the Mishaberach.
ברוך הוא ישמור ויציל אתכם מכל צרה ומצוקה ומכל נגע ומחלה. ישלח ברכה והצלחה בכל מעשה ידינו. ידבר שונאינו תחתיהם ויעטרם בכתר ישועה ובעטרת ניצחון ויקוים בהם הכתוב כי
Everyone, please be seated. Just to show you a little bit about Am Yisrael, Eitan just mentioned to me that he did Miluim for 15 years with our next speaker. The first part of the program was commemorative, to reflect upon the lives lost, the suffering both on Simchat Torah and since. But we're not here tonight just to mourn. We're also here tonight to walk away inspired by the special people we're part of. Simchat Torah was the beginning of a very difficult time for the Jewish people. A lot of loss, a lot of pain, but also the beginning of the expression of how special we are as a people. When a people that was fractured, disunified, came together in a way unparalleled anywhere else around the world to support, to strengthen each other. This Shabbat, I had a meal with someone who worked in the army base where they had to identify the bodies. And she said, people from around the world are shocked at the percentage of bodies that were identified. In most tragedies like the World Trade Center, they get to 40%, 50%. Within a week, they had identified 93% under the terrible circumstances. And within 2 weeks, 99.9%, unprecedented around the world. The dedication of the rabbinic staff in those camps and the forensics, the dedication of the home front. The soldiers are still receiving barbecues and efforts in all ways for Achdus, for soldiers, for the home front, for the wives, for the widows, for the Havdil, for whoever it was. The next part of the program, we're going to hear a little bit about these efforts, and we're very lucky tonight to have with us the person who maybe best represents this spirit of the Jewish people, not just since Simchat Torah, but for many decades. Rav Yosef Tzvi Rimon is the Nasi of Mizrahi, the rabbi of the Gush Etzion Regional Council, the Rosh Yeshiva of Mechon Lev, and frankly, so many special things for the Jewish people that I can't do justice to them. More important than his title, Rav Rimon, in addition to being one of our leading Talmidei Chachamim, who answers hundreds, maybe thousands of halachic questions a day, is the person who is first to act on behalf of the Jewish people whenever it's needed. He is the first. I'm just going to share one brief story. I apologize to the Rav in advance for sharing this. 2 days after the war broke out, I was asked to bring him a donation, some money that people wanted to donate on behalf of the soldiers. And when I came to his house, he seemed unhappy, and I asked him why, and he told me the soldiers need ceramic vests. And he said he found someone who can produce them, but it's $1.5 million shekel. He didn't have the money. He was told in order to start, he needed 500,000 shekel immediately. He told me he went to the bank and took out a loan on his own name for 500,000 shekel to begin the production. Said he didn't have the rest of the money in order to pay for the vests. I took it upon myself to try and help. Within 20 minutes, there was a balabayas from New York who offered to pay the rest of the money without asking how much it was. It's a story about Rav Rimon and about the Jewish people. When I told Rav Rimon, he said, great, I'm moving my 500,000 now to the next vests. He's a person who puts the Jewish people before himself and his own needs, dedicated to all of our soldiers, to every Jew wherever they are. Since Simchat Torah, Rav Rimon has been able to inspire so many of us to follow his lead. We're lucky to have him with us tonight to share some of these efforts and inspiration.
תודה for the warm words. To speak after hearing about Maoz, it's so difficult. Wow, it leaves me with so many thoughts. How we need to appreciate people, not just after they are not here. To see someone like him that against any chance to learn and to succeed, and in the army and everywhere. Wow. A few months ago, 2 priests from Europe came to my office. They wanted me to come to an event in Europe, and they wanted to speak with me before, and we spoke about the war. And after an hour, 2 hours, they say, we want to ask you, we see that you are so sure that you are going to win. How do you know that you are going to win? I told them, what do you mean? It's written in the Torah. השם אלוקיך מתהלך בקרב מחניך. Hashem is with you in the army camp. להצילך, לתת אויביך לפניך. To save you, to rescue you, and read in the Torah that we are going to win. And one of the priests that later on I understood that he has PhD in Tanakh said, you know, the end of the klalot in Parashat Ki Tavo, and that you are going to go to Galus, to diaspora. Said it's written, the end of Ki Tavo. וישיבך השם מצרים באוניות, והתמכרתם שם, לעבדים ושפחות ואין קונה. So I learned with him the Ramban that proves that the end of the Torah is not the Kladot of Ki Tavo. We have Parashat Nitzavim that the Torah says, speaks there on returning to Eretz Yisrael. וישיבך השם אלוקיך אל הארץ אשר ירשו אבותיך וירשת ויטיבך וירבך מאבותיך. The Torah speaks that we are going to return to Eretz Israel and that we will have better things than our parents. And this is the end of the Torah. In Parashat Ha'azinu, that the end is וכיפר אדמתו עמו. The end speaks on the kapara on Eretz Israel. And then I opened Yeshayahu, Amos, Hosea. And you know, it was so easy for me. I opened so many places in Tanakh because to prove few hundred years ago, it was more complicated. But today, when we are here, it's so easy. A child came to me and said, Rebbe, can you prove that Hashem exists? And Rebbe said, I'm in a rush, so a quick answer, 2 minutes. He was an Israeli kid. I told him, if you would ask me 100 years ago, I would need few hours to speak on Briat HaOlam and Yetziat Mitzrayim and Ma'amad Har Sinai. Today, no problem, 2 minutes. He said, what's the answer? I told him, never in the history of the world, a nation was chucked out, kicked out, and after thousands of years came back, returned. Something like this never happened. To see Am Yisrael, after 2,000 years, return back, from 100 places in the world, and to see that it's not just that we return. We have a state, we have an army, Israel, almost in every parameter, is one of the first 10 in the world. Number 3 in the world in high-tech, number 8 in the world in medicine. One of the only countries that reached this space. Of course, Limud Torah, measure of happiness. A few months ago, they published from hundreds of countries. This year, we are number 5 in the world. Last year, we were number 4. It's okay, with war, to go from 4 to 5, fair enough. To understand what's going on, I told this child, it's not just that we see that Hashem exists. We see that Hashem loves us. We see that Hashem Ohev Israel, and everything is written. In the Torah, in the Nevi'im, everything is written. And we read it, we know that it speaks on us. And we can prove from so many places. And we have to know. When I came home, my wife told me, it's good that you are living now and not 1,000 years ago. Because 1,000 years ago, it doesn't matter if you were really right, wrong, you will find yourself in the end in the fire. So Baruch Hashem that we are here. We finished very nice the conversation. Baruch Hashem, they didn't invite me for the conference in Europe. I was happy. But I have to tell you, we know that we are going to win. We know, first of all, what we said right now, the Torah and the Nevi'im, that they speak on us. That we know from so many sources that our Geula, our redemption is something that will never stop. Amos, ולא ינטשו מעל אדמתם אשר נתתי להם, and lots of other Nevi'im, and Chazal. We have no time, so we know that we are going to win because we know our war is the most justest war in the world. We are doing a war not just for us. What Hamas did in Simchat Torah, in October 7, are things that we never had in our history. In the Holocaust, they had terrible other things. But what they did, cruel ways to kill people, and everyone knows, and I know more because the same day, commanders called me all the time and asked me questions, and not the same day, straight after in the evening of Simchat Torah. We know to destroy Hamas is to help the whole world. We know, as we said before, that in army camp, Hashem is with us. We know that everyone that tried to kill us in history is not here anymore. We know that Baruch Hashem, from the beginning of the war, of this war, Am Yisrael is in unity. Okay, now it's just 85%. In the beginning it was 99%. When Am Yisrael is in unity, no one can beat us. We know also from Chazal and also today from high degrees in the army that they say when we are in unity, Hezbollah and Hamas are terrified. And we know that we see our nation. We see the spirit of the soldiers, of the parents of soldiers that are here or that they are not here, the wife of soldiers, the families, Am Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael and in diaspora. You see that no one is like Am Yisrael. No one gets close to Am Yisrael. You know, so many stories. We just heard stories. But all the time, we know the story of Daniel Peretz, Hashem Yikom Damo, the son of Rav Doron Peretz, that an only tank went to the border to fight with terrorists. Never a tank goes alone to the border to fight like this. And he killed so many of them and saved a whole kibbutz, Nachal Oz. Erev Rosh Hashanah, every minute I got a question from another soldier. And to see the questions, you say, wow, a couple that got married 5 months ago. Straight away, the husband went to Miluim, to reserve. Few weeks ago, he finished Miluim. And then he told his wife, look, we married 5 months ago and we weren't together. Now we'll take the money of the gifts of the wedding and we'll go to honeymoon in Kathmandu. They went. After few days, now, Erev Rosh Hashanah, he gets WhatsApp from his unit that they are going north. He called the commander and he told him, look, I'll be late in 1 day because I'm in Kathmandu. He said, what are you doing there? He told him, I'm in a honeymoon. He told him the story. He said, the commander said, don't come in 2 weeks. We don't need you now because we manage, you are in your honeymoon. The soldier said, what do you mean? I'm coming now. And he called me to ask me if he may fly on Rosh Hashanah and can his wife fly with him. But to see Am Yisrael, as Rav Taragin said before, that Am Yisrael is first and then they put themselves. They risk their life. They are ready to give up university, to give up the jobs. It's unbelievable. A woman that called me also beginning of the war, and she says she has 4 kids, small kids, and they just discovered that she has cancer. And she said, I don't know what to do, I'm terrified, and I need to take care of the kids. And then she says, my husband is a MP in Gaza, he's a commander in Gaza. And I don't know what to do. I know that if I'll call him, he'll come back. I need him desperately, but I don't know who is first. I'm first or Am Yisrael. You can search for another woman like this in the world. People that understand that, I just said in the end, I told her, in this case, I told her, look, we have a rule, I just learned here with Tamidei Chutz La'aretz here, on mitzvot, that if it's a mitzvah that can be done also by others, so then it will be not the same like a mitzvah that cannot be done by others. And I told them, look, the memem can be instead of mempei, but your husband is just one. And we need also the home field to be strong, but just to see our women, the wives of the Chayalim and the families. And I want to end. I have 2 minutes. I have so many stories to share. I have to tell you that there is a decision that I don't know what to do. Rav Taragin, maybe will help me, but now on the way, soldiers called me from the north and said, Rebbe, can you come to be with us? A few hours ago they called me, can you come to be with us on Yom Kippur? I don't know what to do because I'm Chazan Ne'ilah in Alon Shvut. I have a community, balagan, you don't know what to do. Okay, if you have an idea, so tell me afterwards. And I just want to finish with maybe one story, 2 stories. One, an officer in Gaza told me they were in a battle and suddenly they recognized far away a group of terrorists, and they understand it's going to be a dangerous battle. One of the soldiers, a frum guy, took his equipment, went first and told everyone, okay, let's go, do like this. And another chayal, not observant, single, pulled him and said, "Ata meshuga? Ya meshigane, you crazy? You have wife, you have 4 children, how can you go first?" He took him and he pushed him back. And this chayal went first. The battle was very difficult, complicated. They succeeded to beat the terrorists, but one of the terrorists shot at them and killed this Chayal. To see Am Yisrael, no one is like Am Yisrael. In Hebrew we say, En al Am Yisrael. En al HaChayalim שלנו. And you see the spirit, you understand, we are in Geula. We are in redemption time. You know, all our history, going try to kill us. But never in a pogrom, we had the ability to protect ourselves. The ability to fight, to protect ourselves. This is Geula. This is a special time. If Hashem would offer me, pick a generation, when would you like to be born? I would pick ours. I think it's one of the best times of Am Yisrael in our history. It's complicated. We are crying on all the injuries and hostages and people that were killed. But we have to understand, we are in a special time. We are in a special time of Geula. We are going to win, and not just we are going to win, we are going to climb from here to much higher level in our redemption. And all the people, like Maoz and his friends, are a part of this Geula, of bringing Mashiach, Be'ezrat Hashem, quicker. And I'll just end. Baruch Hashem, I'm going all the time, soldiers and injuries, and all the time I see things. And one of the things that was very special, to buy equipment to soldiers, it's important, and injuries, and widows and orphans, and I see things that are complicated. Later said I made with 400 widows and orphans from this war. Sometimes you hear something, you say, wow. One of the Achnasot Sefer Torah in the army. They did Achnasat Sefer Torah in Gaza. And a soldier, his name is Noam Kedoshim, told me that in the Achnasat Sefer Torah they were dancing, and all the time dancing around the Torah. And then a frum Chayal stood up and said, wow, I'm so excited. You know, in Simchat Torah, in the middle of the Hakafot, I stopped and I went to the battlefield. Now we are closing a circle. Now we are doing all the Hakafot that I missed in Simchat Torah. Another Chayal, not observant, stood up and said, En kan sgirat ma'agal. We are not closing a circle. And everyone was upset, we had such a good atmosphere. What did you do to ruin it, to destroy it? And then he said, I'm not observant. I never go to shul. I never danced with Torah. You had half Simchat Torah, and then you went to the battlefield. I didn't have at all Simchat Torah. Now, all of us are dancing together around the Torah. It's not closing a circle, it's opening a new one. And this is what we have to feel all the time. We are not closing a circle, we are trying to develop, to come to a much higher place. It cannot be that so many people were killed and will return exactly the same place. This would not happen. We are going to return to a much higher place in unity, in Emunah, in Geula. Be'ezrat Hashem, we pray, we'll daven, we'll try to be better, and Be'ezrat Hashem, that Hashem will bring our soldiers to win in this milchama. Be'ezrat Hashem, that we'll see the hostages that are coming back, שהשם ישלח רפואה שלמה לכל החולים, that we'll have אחדות ואהבה בעם ישראל, בעזרת השם שבקרוב נזכה לראות פני משיח צדקנו.
Thank Rav Rimon for giving us such chizuk. And of course, he's too humble to speak about all of his efforts. Rav Rimon and his organizations have helped tens of thousands of chayalim, I can tell about personally. Have helped all the evacuated communities in raising funds and giving chizuk. Rav Rimon mentioned the seder he did for 400 widows and orphans. Rav Rimon, thank you for everything you do for us. And Baruch should continue giving you the strength.
שיעור לרבנים ומודיעין, לכן אני לא נשאר. אבל לא שאני לא רוצה.
Ramon apologizes. He's on the way to give shiur to Rabbanim, and that's the only reason he's going. Everyone can be seated. It's not just great rabbis like Rav Ramon who stepped in to fill the void and help the Jewish people. Every person, every balabas in America, around the world, Israel, everywhere, stepped in to help. And there were many student efforts in Yeshivot last year, and we want to mark those efforts and what took place. And we'd like to call upon 3 students to each speak for 3 minutes about different efforts that were done by students that can hopefully inspire all of us to do what we can do in the coming year and years. Shane Safin.
So I was asked to share, I guess, a very, very, very small sample of what was done for people who weren't on the front lines, for people who were on the front lines. At the beginning, when everything broke out, there was a lot of confusion and uncertainty. There were really 2 main areas that, at least on a personal level, that I dealt with. I did it with the help of a lot of other very helpful people. Rav Tarragon initiated the initiative. Yishai Feinmesser was very helpful. Stephen Mermelstein, who was a Yeshivat Hakotel alumni, helped with the fundraising. So we have a few pictures of things that we did. But just to what I was saying, that there were 2 parts, there were 2 clear categories of things that soldiers needed. On the one hand, soldiers needed basic living things. A lot of soldiers were called up and weren't prepared at all, and got to the front lines and forgot their phone charger at home. So they couldn't contact their wives or their families. Obviously that was something they needed. A lot of soldiers were called to places and stationed up north where there was nowhere to charge a phone. You could push the button. Words. It's okay. One thing, for example, which is very, very inspiring, a few soldiers in Tod Chanim stationed up north needed solar-powered battery packs because they could not charge their phones in any other way. The price was around 15,000 shekels. We had raised the money to purchase them. When we went to the store to buy the chargers, the person at the store said, if you're buying it for soldiers, it's on me. So we got that for free. You can scroll through the pictures, all just different pictures of things that we got. The other big category of things that were needed, I'm not sure how many of you are aware, the Army originally, when it sent out a text at South Shmona, the Miluim call, they anticipated 60 to 80% would respond. Over 120% responded, which meant that the Army was not prepared logistically for all of the Army things that soldiers needed. For example, lots and lots of soldiers, and actually still don't have, ceramic vests, something that we've spoken about a lot, proper helmets, proper protective gear. So this was, I guess, this was the chargers. This was the charge that was sent to Gaza, actually. You can do the next one. See what the next one is. These are the chargers. So the Chavos also understand what needed to be done. It's not enough just to say, we got the donation, we got the chargers, let's send them. It doesn't help if you send them dead chargers. So the night before, we charged about 100 chargers. And then once we had them fully charged, we sent them up and they made it to Gaza where they were needed. Here's the next picture. Okay, besides for the chargers, another thing that were a lot of lone soldiers. A lot of lone soldiers who don't have family in Israel, who got out of the Army after 3 or 4 months for the first time. And as opposed to a soldier who has family here, who comes home to a home-cooked meal and to a family, we had 15, 20, 30, 40 lone soldiers who went home to nothing. So we organized barbecues and meals for all the lone soldiers who got home after 4 months of serving and didn't have family waiting for them. Next one. 3 minutes running short. And next one. It's another one. Okay, so this one, for example, tzitzis. One of the amazing things is so many chayalim wanted and needed tzitzis. So we worked with a few other yeshivas, and we had bought tons and tons of green begadim, because you could only wear green in the Army, and then we were tying the tzitzis, and we got them delivered across the country. The next picture. And the next one is more tzitzis. Just to talk about the vest for a minute. Rav Targin had mentioned the story with Rav Rimon is one of the many, many stories. We were working with someone in the Rova who was also dealing with getting vests and ceramic vests and helmets for soldiers, just to understand how important they are. There's different grades of protection. The vests that the soldiers had at the moment were not bulletproof, which meant they really weren't protecting them from anything. We managed to get tens of vests to soldiers. There's a lot of organizations that are still dealing with this today. You can just go through the pictures. We're running out of our 3 minutes. Keep going. Okay, YBZ. Yeah, food packages and sending up food up north to the soldiers up north. It was very, very difficult to get up north to get packages. Everything was closed off. There were rockets all the time. So a few brave Rebbeim from Yeshiva decided they were going to drive up north. Socks is something you wouldn't think that you would need to send. Soldiers needed socks. I think that really the moral of the story here is there are so many things that people need. There's so many easy things that people can do. You just have to open your eyes and take the opportunities. I think a lot of times we're too nervous because what impact am I going to have, or what can I do that will be important, or there's more important people dealing with this. The answer is no, it's not true. You could do it also. Little things make a huge, huge difference. If it weren't for the hundreds and thousands of little people who stepped up to do little things, the country wouldn't have had the amazing, huge things that it did.
Thank you, Shon Stafford, and now we're going to Aryeh.
In the aftermath of the tragedy of October 7th, I experienced a deep sense of deja vu. A little over 4 years ago was the breakout of the COVID pandemic. I was here in Yeshiva, and something happened where parents began to start booking tickets for their children to come home. Parents started to book tickets for their children, and little by little, people started to go back to America. 4 years later, after October 7th, the same thing was happening again. I got this feeling that people were leaving, and there was this culture that people were exiting the country once again. And although these two experiences are very different, the outcome for me was the exact same. It was that people were leaving Israel. While we and I are in no way, shape, or form in a place to judge those who left, everyone has their own calculations and has their own reasonings for doing so. There was this culture that was being built, and we wanted to build a culture of people who felt comfortable to stay. Building a culture where people felt like they're not alone, where they get chizik from others who are doing the same thing, a culture of not going anywhere. Aryeh Levinson, who's here with us, along with a couple other Shana Bet guys, decided they were going to start a group chat called Not Going Anywhere. This group chat was going to be made where people were going to give and send pictures of themselves staying in Israel and doing meaningful things throughout the country. There's going to be a place where people can feel comfortable and feel like they're not alone, feel like they're here and they're able to do meaningful things staying here in Eretz Yisrael. Each yeshiva and each seminary was given a representative where they were in charge of taking pictures and sending it to the group chat. Within a couple of days, the group chat got over 1,000 people and needed to create a second group chat. Not Going Anywhere number 2. A little bit later, we realized that a lot of Rabbanim in America started speaking about the importance of staying in Eretz Yisrael in this time. The idea popped into our minds that we thought it would be amazing if we could hear these messages ourselves, here in our own yeshivas and our seminaries. We started to reach out to different Rabbanim throughout the tri-state area and ask them if they'd be willing to speak to us, if they'd be willing to share some words of chizik to those who wanted to stay here in Israel during these difficult times. The responses that we got from these leaders were earth-shattering. One after another, they expressed their excitement to have the opportunity to speak to every one of us, and they agreed to share words throughout the weeks. As you see on the board, some of their speakers that we had, amongst the many, Herschel Schechter, Mordechai Willig, Aryeh Leibowitz, Ephraim Goldberg, Moshe Weinberger, amongst many others. The turnout was incredible. Weekly, we had these speakers coming on to Zoom every single week. The yeshivas and seminaries were watching these speeches over Zoom together. And then a couple weeks later, Nachum Siegel, the host of JM in the AM, came to Yeshiva to give a live radio session in Yeshiva. And he asked us if we would go on the show to explain some of the efforts that we were trying to do, what we were trying to build with this campaign of not going anywhere. I'm not telling you this to get an applause or a pat on the back. Frankly, I don't care about either of those things. The message I want to relay to everyone is that when Klal Yisrael is going through challenging times, we don't back down, we step up. We don't give up, we stand up. You don't need to be fighting on the front lines in order to contribute to the success of Klal Yisrael. We heard all those stories, all those heroes. But for each and every one of us sitting in this room, we're in yeshiva, who don't have the schus to be fighting on the front lines. The question is, what are we doing? It can be done from the four walls of our yeshiva. It can be done sitting at home or in our yeshiva or our seminary. As we sit here 1 year later, we all need to ask ourselves, what have I done this past year to help Klal Yisrael? And what am I going to do this coming year to help Klal Yisrael move forward? What are the things that I could do to help contribute to the success of Klal Yisrael and Am Yisrael? Try and come up with one idea, something small. Start amongst your friends, start amongst your family, start amongst your community. But think of something that you can start to do that's going to make a difference, and then get to work.
I did not make a presentation, so my words are going to have to suffice. But thank you, everybody. Following the onset of the October 7th attacks and the subsequent war, an overwhelming sense of unity, or achdut, swept through the Jewish people. In Israel, the solidarity was felt in nearly every aspect of life, from the light rail to the kotel, even in yeshiva, of course in yeshiva, but it extended far beyond our country's borders. The response from Jewish communities worldwide was extraordinary. I witnessed and heard from friends and family from home that, quote-unquote, ordinary people transformed into amateur fundraisers, event organizers, and even dipped their toes into the weapons and military equipment procurement worlds, all in support of Israel, the Jewish people, and the war effort. However, the most significant and far-reaching initiative that I had the privilege of being part of or even heard of was definitely Achenu. As soon as Rav Terragon conceded this idea and began enlisting students from Hakotel to help bring it to life, I was immediately drawn to it and eager to help and make it a reality in any way I could. The Achenu Worldwide Achdut Initiative's vision is to harness the unity Jews felt in the wake of October 7th and turn it into a lasting force that would connect Jews globally. Not just throughout the duration of the war, but for generations and generations to come. The aim was to bridge the gap between Jews in Israel and Jews in places like Kansas, Tanzania, and Russia, fostering a sense of shared identity and purpose across continents, more than we already had as the Jewish people. This was definitely not your average community initiative. It was a monumental effort led mainly by yeshiva students, and Rav Terragon, of course. My friends and I in Hakotel recruited high schoolers as school representatives, called countless Jewish leaders and celebrities across the globe, and coordinated Achenu's programming, logos, websites, flyers, and much, much more. In just a few short weeks and many, many late nights, we developed and began executing a plan to make this dream a reality. By the end of the planning stage, we had secured over 120 community shuls, schools, and global organizations such as Mizrahi and Olami. Our partners spanned 50 countries, 12 languages, and included dozens of seminaries and yeshiva in Israel and their students as well. They helped spread Achenu's message through banners, merchandise, and disseminating our programming to their members. In addition, we received video messages of support from renowned Rabbanim and Jewish figures, including Rav Hershel Schachter, singer Yishai Ribo, A.B. Rottenberg, of course, the beloved composer of the song Achenu, and Avram Fried. One of the most rewarding aspects of my involvement was the opportunity to speak with the chief rabbis from countries around the world, including Russia, the United Arab Emirates, Mozambique, and Lesotho. As the one in charge of coordinating support for all of our country heads, I was able to connect with influential figures in the world, in the Jewish world, some of whom were even involved in the historic Abraham Accords, and to speak with those in the forefront of change for the Jewish people around the world. The crowning achievement of Achenu was our Siyam Mishnah Shas, where thousands of Jews from 50 countries and in 12 languages came together to learn the entire Mishnah in memory of those murdered on the October 7th attacks. Each Mishnah learned was dedicated to one of the victims of the Hamas attacks. The event opened with a speech by Yitzhak Herzog, President of Israel, and was watched by thousands around the world. The program included remarks and Mishnah recitations by prominent Jewish leaders such as Rav Yitzchak Berkovitz, Senator Joe Lieberman, and Natan Sharansky. Chief rabbis from various countries, including South Africa, as well as the Sephardic and Ashkenazi chief rabbis of Israel, also participated in the event. A stirring rendition of Misha Berach for the state of Israel was performed by the Maccabees, Y Studs in 613, and the event concluded with a powerful music video featuring Jews worldwide singing Achenu together, B'yachad. The CM was a resounding success, achieving its goal of connecting Jews across the globe through the act of learning. While my time learning in Yeshiva during this period of course felt more meaningful, knowing we were contributing to the spiritual aspect of the war and the fact that many of the guys in Hakotel were drafted into the army, as a Shana Aleph student, I still couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to do more. My many roles in Achenu gave me the opportunity to make that tangible impact. They allowed me not only to engage with prominent figures and countless Yeshiva students across the globe, honor the memory of those lost, and work closely with Rav Terragon, who quickly became my most frequently contacted contact on WhatsApp, but also to realize the incredible potential we have to make a difference if we just step up, put in the effort, and try. Thank you.
As mentioned earlier, the goal of the program tonight is not just to mourn and to commemorate, but also to be inspired about the upcoming year and years. And I think there's no one I know, the Jewish people, who is as much of an inspiration as our next speaker. Rabbi Leo D., every time I reach out to him for any program we mention here, Achenu, not going anywhere, is always the first. What can I do? How can I help? I remember what he said in Not Going Anywhere. I don't know if he does what I do. He said, if your parents ask you to come home, tell them they should come home. And that stayed with me, the impact that he had on many. Those who don't know Rabbi D., sadly, his family were the victims of a terrible terrorist attack a year plus ago, Pesach time. His wife and two of his daughters were murdered by Hamas terrorists before we were fighting the fight that needed to be fought. Rabbi D very quickly became a leader, speaking out, encouraging, giving strength when he was the one who others were trying to give strength to. And we thank Rabbi D for his messages before that, but especially in the past year and a half. We thank him for being here tonight to give us his vision of where we should be taking everything moving forward.
Kahal Kadosh, I think one word comes to mind when I hear the speakers this evening is Giborim. Kulam Giborim. Everyone is a hero. I'm just astonished by the greatness of Am Yisrael and Baruch Hashem. Gemara says that Shlosh Ba'in Behesach Hadat. Metzia, Akrav, Mashiach. Three things come and change your life in the flash of an eyelid: a lost object, a found object, a scorpion, and Mashiach, Gula. I had the honor of three beautiful ladies in my life, each of whom changed my life in an instant. My wife, I fell in love with on the spot. I knew I was going to marry her after we first met. My oldest daughter, Maya, changed my life, turned me into a parent in a flash of an eyelid. My youngest daughter, Rina, the phrase I remember from her, the last phrase that I remember from her, about 2 weeks before the tragedy, she said, "Daddy, you could do more for Am Yisrael." And of course, that resounds in my head now. It changed my life in an instant as well. An akrav, a scorpion, changes your life in the flash of an eyelid. The modern equivalent of a scorpion is 2 Hamas terrorists with 2 Kalashnikovs and 20 bullets, and my life was changed also in a flash of an eyelid. But of course, the 7th of October happened in Hesach Dat, in flash of an eyelid, and it changed all of our lives forever. And if I hadn't experienced the first Metzia and I hadn't experienced the Akrav, I was citing the words of Rabbi Akiva, Avdiel, I wouldn't believe that Mashiach could come in the flash of an eyelid. But I think that Mashiach has come in the flash of an eyelid. And if we look at what is Gula, Gula is Giloi Shechina, greater Giloi Shechina. We have had a Giloi Shechina at Sum since the 7th of October. What does it mean? It means we see the difference between good and evil. We live in a world of sheker, I think we're aware of the fact that it's very difficult to find emet anywhere on social media and on any of the major news channels today. Everything is sheker, the way people are living is sheker, what people are talking about is sheker. And suddenly on the 7th of October, the light was shining on good and evil. We woke up the next morning, on Sunday morning, people were marching on the streets of London, Paris, and New York, screaming, "Kill the Jews." Pure evil was visible to everybody. And it wasn't that the 7th of October created new anti-Semites. These anti-Semites existed on the 6th of October, it's just that we didn't see them. The light was shining on pure evil. This is a bracha, this is a great thing. But the light was also shining on great good, on truth. We saw miracles which are uncountable, and I'm sure people discussed them. We saw 330 missiles a few months ago coming over, nobody was injured. We saw 200 missiles a week ago, Baruch Hashem, nobody was injured. We saw the president and the foreign minister of Iran dropping out the sky in what they described as an act of God, but there's nothing like it in the history books of any time any two countries have fought together and two major leaders just fall out the sky. It's not happened before. And then we saw pages blowing up and maybe 5,000 killing many of the leadership of Hezbollah, which was a miracle being that Israel actually planned ahead, because this was booked about 2 years before. And if you know Israelis, you know that they never planned anything ahead. So the miracle was they planned ahead. And we saw a miracle. I mean, right at the beginning of the war, we saw a Turkish MP stand up in the Turkish parliament, curse Israel 2 minutes, drop dead on the spot, which again is not normal. Okay, we're seeing things which are just not normal. They're emet. These things are all emet, but they're not normal. So we have Giloi Shechina. And I've been saying, for the last year, I said that if I had to name the world we were in before the 7th of October, it's the world of Galut. And if I had to name the world that we're in now, it's the world of Gula. It is the time Mashiach, like Rabbi Ramon pointed out, by definition, because the Gemara teaches us, and this is a psak of the Rambam, Ein ben olam hazeh yemot Mashiach chutz mishivu malchut Elvan. There's no difference between this world and the Messianic period, except that Israel will not be under existential threat from her enemies. And Baruch Hashem, one by one, we're smashing Hamas, Hezbollah, please God, very soon, Iran. We are getting rid of the existential threat of enemies. This is the war for Mashiach. This is the war for Geulah. We are here in an exceptional time. What does it mean to us? Well, let me just ask another question. People point out that Israelis, we talked about a number of the tremendous Giborim, the soldiers, and those who met injured soldiers, have resilience. Jews do not have resilience. I can tell you that Jews do not have resilience. Those of you who study physics will know that resilience is when you squash a spring and it springs back to exactly the same length. It has 100% resilience. Okay, so it's a test of how much something that's under pressure can actually expand back to where it was originally. The Jews are likened to an olive. Why an olive? Because when you crush an olive, you get something much more valuable than the original olive. You get olive oil, which is much more valuable. We don't have resilience because to go just back to where you were is not enough. And I can tell you from my own experience that having been through a tragedy and trauma, if you just go back to your routine that you were in beforehand, it's not enough, because every moment will remind you of what you're lacking, the trauma that you've been through. So you're forced to go through a process where you have to sort of improve your game. And there's something else that's going on. It's not called resilience. I'll tell you what it's called. It's called hope, tikva. That is what the Jewish people have. We have tikva, and it's much, much more valuable than resilience, because it means that when things get bad, we know things are going to get much better. We saw this in Mitzrayim. We were slaves, and then suddenly we were receiving the Torah, the greatest moment in the history of mankind. The only time Hashem appeared to the whole people. We saw this when after the Holocaust, 3 years after the Holocaust, when the state of Israel was created. We saw this 6 days after the beginning of the Six-Day War, when we thought, God forbid, there was going to be another Holocaust, and we established, and we got back the Kotel, we got the Judea and Samaria. Baruch Hashem, we see that the way that history works is the Jewish people are crushed like an olive, and out comes olive oil. And I just want to express how this plays out in our this generation, young generation in Israel. I had the honor of hosting 3 yeshiva boys a couple of weeks ago for Shabbat. By the way, you should always invite yourself to people you know, or even people you don't know, for Shabbat in a frat. People are only too happy to host, I can tell you. So please invite yourselves to anyone you know. You should be traveling around the country and getting to know all different parts of the country. So they came along, and I gave them the Aliyah spiel at the beginning, and one of them said, I'm making Aliyah anyway, and the other two said, we're going to go home to England and we're going to study to be accountants. So I left off for the whole of Shabbat, and then we came to the end of Shabbat. It was Motzei Shabbat. And we have a bus stop minyan in the street, and across the street from me, I said, I just want to show you something. And I took them across the street to a park. And there's a big Israeli flag pole, and there's a plaque. And I told them the story of this park. At our Shiva, what we sing Shiva, a group of 17-year-old boys from a frat came to me and said, Rabbi D, we'd like to build a park in memory of your wife and daughters. We will raise the money, we will do the work, we just want your blessing. So I said, fine, please go ahead. So I saw the flag go up, and I saw the mosaic with the names of the girls go up across the road from me. I didn't go the other side of the hill to see what they were doing. And 6 months later, one of the boys came to my house and said, okay, I'd like to show you what we've got. And he took me over the edge of the hill, and he showed me how they paid the Motzah to drill a path across the mountain. They put in a path, and they planted trees, and they put in a watering system, and they put in a light system. And they built furniture, benches and tables and a pergola by hand from pieces of wood. I saw one of them finishing it off. He had his YouTube video open, how to use a drill in one hand, and you had the drill in the other hand, and he was screwing things in. There were about 20 boys who dedicated about 6 months of their spare time in order to create this, and raised $20,000 or something in order to pay for it. And I cried. When I saw it, I cried. Why did I cry? Because when we came to Israel in 2004, 2008, for me to study in Hamivta, still get my smicha, and before we went away for 6 years to England for Shlichut, we weren't planning to live here. We weren't particularly Zionistic. We didn't come from families that really talked about Israel particularly. We were here to study. But what we didn't expect was we fell in love with a frat, with Israel. And what did we fall in love with? What did Lucy fall in love with? With the youth. We couldn't believe the youth in a frat, I'm sure, all over Israel. The youth here, all they want to do is do things for Am Yisrael. They go to the army, they do a Sharut Lemi. They're constantly, even as teenagers, they're finding projects to do, and it's absolutely incredible. My son's a madrich now, 95 kids came to his first Bula. Everybody wants to be involved in a different way. This is just incredible. So I said to these three boys, these three yeshiva boys, I said, look, you might think that for yourself now, look at your life in the present. The idea of going back to England, is a good idea. And maybe it is. I don't think it is, but maybe it is. Who knows? I said, but I want you to think in a different perspective. I want you to look at the youth here on the side. When you have kids, do you want your kids to be like the youth here? Or do you want your kids to be like the youth back in England? Jewish kids and even the non-Jewish kids, if you're American, the kids at Columbia and Harvard, what do you aspire to? What do you inspire for your kids? So the decision you make should not just be based on your own current reality, but should be based on looking ahead. Because actually, we as Jews, we plan ahead. That's what is called tikva, that's what's called hope. Hope is that we invest in our kids. Your parents invest in you. They invest in you because according to the Ramban, everything that's done b'chutz la'aretz is for practice, and your parents invested in you so that you would be prepared for Aliyah. You come to on Aliyah, and you have all the skills that you need in order to make Aliyah, and that is called hope, right? Your parents and many generations have prepared for this moment by teaching their kids all the skills they need in order to be great Israeli citizens. And I say that without any apology because there is no word for Judaism, let's say, in the Torah. There's no word for religion in the Torah. There's just B'nai Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. That's it. We're not a religion. We are a people. With Israeli people, we were in exile. Baruch Hashem, we are now in Gula. So what does that mean for us? So as Rav Rimon quoted from Pachim Nitzavim, after the tochacha of Kitavo, which the Ramban explains is actually the punishments of the exile, the second exile, and that's why they go on and on and on for 2,000 years, and the whole chapter, some chapters in Kitavo, we get to Nitzavim, and it says that we'll have to do Teshuvah, and we'll do Teshuvah. And as Rav Rimon pointed out, there's two types of Teshuvah that talked about in Pachim Nitzavim. V'shavta ad Hashem Elokecha, V'shav Hashem Elokecha et shvutecha. Right? The word teshuva is used in two perspectives. You'll do teshuva, return to the land, but there'll also be a return ad Hashem Elokecha. You'll do teshuva as we understand it, return teshuva, which is what we're doing now in the Aseret Yemei Teshuvah. What is the teshuva that we need to do in the Aseret Yemei Teshuvah? And why do we need to have two types of teshuva mentioned in this parsha? Let me suggest. It's for two different types of people. If you're a Jew living in Eretz Israel, then it should be V'shavta ad Hashem Elokecha. But if you're a Jew living outside of Israel, then the most important thing is V'shavta ad Hashem Elokecha et shvutecha, that you should come back. Okay, once you come back, then you can do the teshuva that needs to be done here. So you're here, Baruch Hashem. So what is the teshuva that we need to do now, coming up until Yom Kippur? And I just want to make a couple of suggestions in the last 5 minutes or so that we have. So there's a beautiful idea by Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman, Reish Pei Bet, I think. And he says that actually, we make a mistake when we do tshuva because we focus on all the bad things that we did in the previous year. We focus on all the bad things, and that makes us sad. And I can tell you something that, if you're in a sad state of mind, you're not fit to do anything, not to change at all. You have to you have to be in a good mood in order to achieve anything in life. So he says, don't do that. He says, do something else. He says, take a blank piece of paper. He says, and write a song. What do you mean write a song? He says, write the good things that you did in the last year. Think about a different way. The positive things you did last year. These are incredible things. People that help the soldiers, and they cooked, and they slept, and they bought, and they raised money, and they did all these wonderful things. Write a list. But what is a song? A song is like a poem. A poem and a song, they have like a logic between the lines. So what he's asking for is, what's the logic? What connects these things I did? I did a lot of random things. I helped my grandmother. I helped a soldier. I studied an extra seder in yeshiva. What's the thing that these have in common? Maybe it's because it shows that I'm a caring person. Maybe it's that I'm a person who cares about others. Maybe I'm somebody who believes in growth. Wait, so let's find, what is that common denominator? That's the song part of it. And once you have that, that's what you need to focus in the year ahead. Take your strength, okay? Because everybody has a specific tafkid, and your tafkid is not the same as somebody else. This is the wonderful thing about Am Yisrael. We've seen all these wonderful things and all these stories, and everybody's different, and everybody's different in a wonderful way. There's a book by Rabbi Mark Angel, which is called, I read it 20, 30 years ago, Losing the Rat Race and Winning at Life. And in it, he expresses the following idea, and I'll summarize it for you in one line. He says there are two voices in everyone's head. Kol HaNeshama, the voice of the soul, and Kol HaBacharim, the voice of other people. He says the people who are successful in life are the ones who listen to the voice of the soul, and they don't listen to the voice of others. What does that mean? There's an essential self, there's a tafkid, there's a purpose for each and every one of us. That's what we need to do. But then there's Facebook and Instagram and your friends and your teachers and your rabbis and your parents and they're all good. But they can't tell you who you are. Only you can tell you who you are. Now, how do you know what your kol neshama is? Right? It's not lying in bed. In fact, there are many different tricks to finding this, but let me just tell you one of them is, I can tell you how you know what it isn't, okay? What it isn't is when you have pain. You have kav, right? Kav is there, pain, is to teach us that we're not on the right track, okay? Kav is the most wonderful gift, and I've experienced a lot of pain over the last year and a half. Okay, what causes the pain is hard to call it a gift, although maybe in Olam Haba. But once you have something that caused the pain is a gift because the pain can be interpreted and can be used to change yourself, to do the tshuva, to find your right path. The pain tells you you're not on the right path. For example, on Rosh Hashanah, Thursday morning, my alarm went off, and many of you probably the same thing, my 5:30 alarm went off. Now, either I could lie in bed and suffer the pain, the chronic pain of the noise which rings on, and mine never seems to go off, or I could jump out of bed and I could go to the Ashkama Minyan, and I could go to Rabbi Shir, and I could do a bit more learning, and I could say, this is a great opportunity. So the pain can be used in two ways. Right? I can ignore it, or I can not. Am Yisrael has just experienced a tremendous pain. And we've all experienced pain, and maybe we feel from what we see today, what people have been talking about, we feel the pain. The pain is not just what happened on the 7th of October. The pain is not transferred pain from other people. The pain is, as my daughter Rita said to me, Daddy, you could be doing more. Okay, I guarantee you, if you're feeling pain because of what you're seeing, and when you see a video of what happened 7th of October, and when you hear from these people, the pain is you could be doing more. We could all be doing more. The question is, what can we be doing? So that should be the question. We transform our pain and decide what we can do to do more. So I want to just sum up. We are in a time of Gula. I think that's clear. We have two forms of tshuva that the Torah requires of us. One is to come back to our country, and two is to come back to Hashem. The way to do tshuva is to look at what our strengths are, and try to work out what our purpose is, because that is the ultimate tshuva. We drift off listening to the voice of others. Very easy. Our Yetzer Hara tells us just to do what everyone else is doing, because then we're safe. Okay, but actually we need to return tshuva to our essential self. And we're going to come to Yom Kippur. And at the end of Yom Kippur, I can guarantee you that all your sins will be erased. Okay? The Hashem says your sins will be erased. Okay? That means that all of us are going to come out of Yom Kippur, please God, with a white slate. Okay? And what we need to be doing now is decide what we want to write on that slate. That is the avoda of the Aseret Tshuva. That is the avoda of now. We take our pain, our personal pain, the pain of the 7th of October, the pain and the suffering of the soldiers, the hostages, and we need to transform it into a white piece of paper where we know exactly what we need to do in the year ahead. I wish you good luck.
Avinu, Avinu, Sheba Shamayim, Tzur Yisrael legoalo. 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 Shelach orcha v'amidcha l'rasheha sareha v'yatzeha v'yatzeha v'tatnem v'tzat tova milfanecha v'tatnem v'tzat tova milfanecha. Avinu, Avinu, Sheba Shamayim, Tzur Yisrael legoalo. Avinu, Avinu, Sheba Shamayim, Tzur Yisrael legoalo. V'nomar Amen, v'nomar, v'nomar
Everyone can remain standing. Just before we conclude, So on behalf of Mizrahi, and I want to thank Yeshivat Hakotel, Yeshivat Achsania, and Rav Terragan for really being the force pushing this event forward. I want to thank Eliyahu from Yeshivat Hakotel and also Charlie here, the Morel family. Thank you for sharing your personal story. Before we go down dancing to the Kotel, we got to ask ourselves, what is this whole event for? What is the purpose? What is the purpose of this event? And when you run an event, you want to move people. That is the point, to move people. Well, what does it mean to move people? What is the meaning to move someone? To move someone means that you're not the same person that you are now, that something inside you has shifted. And our hope is, our tefillah is, like you heard the stories today of all the Bacharim from the yeshiva that have done incredible stuff, that you too have been shifted. And today you are more part of Medinat Yisrael, of Eretz Yisrael, of Torat Eretz Yisrael, that you're going to carry it forward in your year in Israel, in your experience here. There are so many ways to do that. There are so many opportunities. Some of them you can find in the pamphlets we left out on the chairs for you. If you want to be in leadership, if religious Zionism is something you find to be your calling, if being informed about Israel is being an advocate, is active in Israel, it does not matter. But you are here today. And as Rav Doron Peretz's son, Daniel Peretz, Hashem Yikom Damo, wrote, Im lo ani azmi, if not me, then who? And to end with Hillel Hazaken's words that are a follow-up, mamash, to those words, mamash, ve'im lo achshav imatai, if not now, then when? Thank you very much for partaking in this event. Thank you, Yeshivat Hakotel. And just to end with the final words of our president, who Bemet spoke incredible words, and he ends almost every call that he has, every time he addresses the nation, he says, B'yachad na'amod, together we will stand, B'yachad nilachem, together we will fight, and Be'ezrat Hashem, B'yachad ninatzeach. Gmar Chatima Tova.
צה"ל מתיר בשעה זו לפרסום על דבר מותו של חטוף נוסף, סרן דניאל פרץ, זכרו לברכה.
On October 7th, Captain Daniel Perez was a 22-year-old commander of a tank unit stationed at Nahal Oz base on the Gaza border. Along with thousands of Israelis, Daniel was called upon to put his life on the line on perhaps the most fateful day in Israel's modern history. Taken hostage with 2 crew members, Daniel was declared dead 163 days later. His body has yet to be returned to Israel for burial. His father, Rabbi Doron Perez, the executive chairman of World Mizrahi, takes us through Daniel's journey, from a self-focused teenager to a self-actualizing young man to a selfless hero.
Daniel was the most energetic, ADHD, fun-loving teenager you could ever imagine. I think he was the happiest when he was with his friends. He had so many friends from every stage of life, from South Africa, Israel, religious, secular backgrounds, all types. Daniel, I think, was the best friend you could have, so beloved and so invested. His older brother Jonathan and him were the best of friends, close since they were small, growing up together, they would play, have fun, and fight with each other. And indeed, when they grew older, they connected about challenges in the army, life, and leadership. Deep bonds of brotherly love. 1, 2, 3. Salute. Yes. You're not saying the Shema, man. Show us, okay, guys, show us how you march. March around the room. Let's see the soldiers march. He absolutely loved sport, especially high-octane extreme sports, whether it was being a super fast ice skater, wakeboarding, whether he was going full speed over a ramp, doing 360-degree flips in the air. No one loved high-octane energy more than Daniel. Eventually, during a wakeboarding accident, he fell, tearing some ligaments and cartilages in his knee. Despite operations and 9 months of physical therapy, Daniel was disqualified from combat. He would have to give up on his dream of being in the Sayeret Commando of Golani. Despite being clever and quick on the uptake, Daniel would not have been satisfied with a desk job. He felt he needed to direct his prodigious energies towards combat, so he actually fought with the army doctors for months on end until they raised his physical profile just high enough so he could enlist to the tank corps. Daniel absolutely loved the tank, both its complexity and its power. He became a disciplined, highly professional soldier, always striving for excellence. I saw him as a young man involved in self-actualization, wanting to be the best that he could be. Indeed, he was selected to be a commander and was chosen as the outstanding commander of the entire course. He continued thereafter to officers' course, where he excelled as well, and then received his own tank crew, known as CHARVOT. He was then offered to participate in the next stage of development as an officer, to be a company commander. In fact, one of my last conversations with him was about his deliberations whether or not to continue further in the army. I felt that Daniel was at the best stage of his life that I'd ever seen him, and I was so impressed with his thought process and maturity. Then came October 7th. I have to admit that I thought Daniel's primary motivation was self-actualization and self-fulfillment, personal achievement, and not selflessness for a greater cause. How wrong I was. A great gift we received from Daniel was his diary that was returned from Nachal Oz base, a diary we knew nothing about. Now that he was an officer, commanding soldiers for the first time and making literally life and death decisions, he began to be deeply introspective. On the opening page, he wrote a heading, "The Things I Think About Before Going to Sleep." Here he asked himself a question: why am I here? To this he answered that since he had gone to Poland in grade 11, he understood the price the Jewish people had paid when they did not have the ability to defend themselves. Now that he's a soldier and a commander, he felt he had this duty to defend his people. And then, on a separate line, he wrote a charge to himself: Im lo ani azmi. If not me, then who? It was this very sentiment of taking full responsibility for others that was exactly what drove Daniel on the most fateful day, not only in his life, but of the Jewish people in our generation. On that day, Daniel and his tank crew fought valiantly for 2¼ hours against the first wave of Nukhba terrorists. He then noticed tens of motorbikes crossing the border, the second wave, each armed with an RPG. He could have remained in the safety of his tank position and fired shells at them, killing some, but knowing all well that the majority would certainly get through. Fully aware that he was the last line of defense, Daniel did not hesitate for a moment. Without any concern for his safety, he left his position and charged straight at them. Shelling, shooting, zigzagging, trampling, CHARVOT Peretz did all they could to stop every single terrorist until eventually his tank was overrun, where he was shot, killed, and taken hostage.
What's really, really special about this day and really inspires me personally is next to each grave of any halal, any person or soldier that has fallen for the state of Israel, there's an Israeli soldier that comes, speaks to the parents, supports them, really just gives them respect for what they have done for the country.
Daniel Ish Hamudot, Daniel the beloved, That was what we wrote both on his bar mitzvah invitation and sadly on his grave. We also engraved 3 additional phrases that we believed encompassed who he was. He stuck to the mission at hand, fought with bravery, and saved many lives. You know, in looking back, I see how a young teenager, as teenagers are, focused on himself as the center of his life. How he grew into a self-actualizing 20-year-old focused on personal achievement, and then emerged as a courageous, selfless 22-year-old hero focused only on the well-being of others, genuine Mesirut Nefesh. You know, when speaking to Daniel's closest friends, and specifically when reading his diary, I'm reminded of the reflections of Otto Frank, the father of Anne Frank, when he read his daughter's diary. He said that only when reading the diary did he learn so much about his daughter that he didn't know, even though he spent years in such close proximity to her. So too do we feel that we learned parts about our son, significant parts that we never really knew. This fills us with both great pain and enormous pride at the very same time. On that day, when the Jewish people needed him most, Daniel was totally committed to what he had written to himself when he became an officer. If not me, then who?
An entire generation of young fighters, as exemplified by Daniel, Hashem Yikom Damo, together with his brother and best friend Jonathan, who also fought bravely and was injured, revealed to us who they really were. A selfless and heroic generation, willing to sacrifice their lives to protect our people, our land, and everything we stand for.